Okay. All right. So today I'm going to talk about how to write a research or technical report or paper and my thoughts on that. Okay. Let me also present a disclaimer that in this presentation I have put forward my thoughts on how to write a technical research report or paper, especially in the context of application-oriented computer science field. Okay. I understand that everybody has their own writing style, and my thought may not be considered as any strict rule or guidelines. Uh, yeah, but if you like them, you may like to follow these suggestions in writing your capstone project report. Okay. That's the proposition or the proposal that guidelines provided in this presentation can be used to write the capstone project report in this course. Okay. Anytime if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and then ask questions. Uh, okay, well, let's start with writing. Writing, is it easy? Well, somebody has said that writing means all you do is stare at a blank sheet of paper until drops of blood form on your forehead. So the bottom line is that you need to think a lot to uh, write, and writing is not easy. Okay, even writing a paragraph may take sometimes 30 minutes to 1 hour uh, with a concentrated effort. Okay, so writing is not easy, and although this presentation is tuned towards writing a research report or research paper or a technical paper, however, most part of it can be applicable to the report that you would be writing for your project. Okay. So what is a technical research report or a paper? Well, uh, somebody mentions that technical report research paper means hours spent in library or online in this current situation of outbreak. More hours toiling with notes and drafts and the headache of dealing with mysterious rules of documentation. So it seems like writing is not easy. But let's see, can we make it simpler and easy? In other words, research paper or technical report is a formal written argument in which all evidence is systematically documented. And the keywords here are formal, argument, evidence, and systematically documented. So whatever you write, try to be as formal as possible. Formal could include writing in simple English language, easy to understand. However, being a scientific scientific professionals here, we should also try to include some formalism in terms of um, mathematical equations, and mathematical equations should be used to simplify the idea which you want to present, not to make it complicated. So that should be the key. Okay, we should try to make presentation in mathematical form, in formal form, in such a way that it is easy for anybody to understand rather than making it difficult to understand. Okay. We should make proper arguments to justify our writing, our choices, our experimentation, our method, and our choice of programming tool, etc. We should make proper arguments, so that we should always try to look for why we are doing that. Not only what we are doing that, but why we are doing this. Okay, so why is very important here. We should also look at what evidence we have to support our arguments, and then we need to present this in a systematically documented form. That means it has to follow certain rules and guidelines of writing. Okay. Well, there are many other definitions of research paper or technical report. Research papers are also called a scholarly paper. Is a document which contains original research results or reviewing existing results. So if you talk about research reports or research papers, they could be generally of two types. One is you are presenting your original research results. You developed a new method, and then you experimented with that method, and then you are presenting the results of that method, and results you compare with other results, and then say that, okay, yes, this is a new method which is better in some sense compared to existing methods. The other type of papers could be review existing results. So in this case, you are writing a review paper. That means you basically surveyed or reviewed existing researches, existing works of other people, and you are analyzing those works from different perspectives and making a comparison, and then coming up with certain conclusions that this method is good in this aspect, whereas the other method is good in this aspect. This method has this drawback which is overcome by other method. So that would be a review kind of a research report or research paper. Okay. Then this other definition is research paper or research report is a document that describes research contribution made in the field. Okay. So there are different definitions of research paper and research report. Okay. Then we look at types of research. So I would like to classify these types of research into two categories. One is incremental type, and then other is novel idea based. You might remember this I talked about this point in the beginning of the class as well. So incremental type of research is that a problem already exists, and there are multiple solutions to solve that problem, and you are coming up with yet another solution, and you are analyzing that and experimenting with that solution, and establishing that this solution is better than existing solutions in some sense. So that is like you are doing some sort of incremental research. There are 100 solutions already exist to solve a problem, and you are presenting 101st solution, which is better in some sense compared to existing 100 solutions. Okay, so that is an incremental type of a work. Then the second category is novel idea based kind of a work, which is you come up with a new problem that nobody has ever thought of. Okay, this problem is itself a new problem, and that means there's no solution already exists to that, and any solution you present is a novel solution because the problem itself is a new problem. And then you become pioneer to work on this problem. So that means anybody who would be working on this problem after you would be referring to your work, that this problem was identified by so and so, and then you become famous for that work. So if I ask you which one is harder? Which one is harder to do here? Incremental type of research or novel idea based research? So we can look at more characteristics of these type of researches. Incremental type of research, a problem is well known, an improved solution is provided. For example, you have a face recognition algorithm, a new algorithm, face recognition, which is better than existing ones in some sense. So face recognition is already a known problem, and many people have worked on that. And you are coming up with another solution to that problem, which is better than existing solutions in some sense. Maybe existing solutions had 90% accuracy, and you are coming up with a method which has 92% accuracy. So you are doing incremental kind of improvement in that field. Okay. Whereas novel idea-based research means the problem itself is new. Nobody has ever thought of this problem, and we are the first one to work on that problem. And a solution, that means any solution you propose would be a new solution because the problem itself is new. Okay. And other researchers will follow us and will do incremental research based on this problem. Okay. So which one is harder? Can I ask you? Let me see who are the participants.
I believe that coming up with your own solution to, well, coming up with the problem and being the pioneer of that would be the harder.
Would be the harder, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Who is calling? Who is speaking?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Yeah. So the second one is harder, and therefore many people like to do the first one. And many projects in this course, they're also, I would suppose that they're based on the first type of research, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing bad about it because the second one is harder to do. So if we can't find any novel idea-based research, then let's do incremental type of research. Both are fine. Okay. All right, so now we will come to structure of a technical or a research report or a paper. Okay, that means how do we structure it? What do we write and what should come when? So the structure generally is like this, that you would have a title of the paper or a report, then you would have authors' names and their affiliation. Okay. So that is usually the first thing in the paper you see on top. Okay. Then second thing you see is the abstract, which is roughly 5% or less of the total report, depending upon the length of the report. If it's, let's say, 20-page report, then it would be just 1/4 of a page. So it's just roughly 1/4 of, or maybe I would, if I would, let's say a number of words, generally it is 150 words or something. Okay, anything more than 150 words, that means it is too much you're writing in abstract. Okay, then the next part comes is introduction, and introduction section is roughly 10 to 15%, I would say, okay, of the entire report. Again, it depends upon the length of the report, but generally, let's say in a 20-page report, introduction could be 1 to 2 pages. You should not put more than that in introduction. Okay. Then the third section usually is related work. That means the existing literature, what you have reviewed for the problem which you are solving in your report, or which you are dealing with in your report. What are the related work, existing literature to that, and that could be, again, 10 to 15%. Okay. Then next thing would be proposed work. So that means the work which you have done, you would be presenting that here in this section, and that is fairly a large part of the report, around 30%, I would say. Okay. Then you should also be emphasizing largely on experiments, results, and analysis. So that is also a large part of a report, around 30%. So proposed work plus experiment result analysis is usually 60% part of your report, which is a significant part of your report. Okay. Then 5%, or again in words, I would say around 150 to 200 or let's say 150 words, similar to what we have in abstract. You would use it for conclusion and future work. Okay. So you have done something, but it could be extended. There are some issues which you haven't addressed that can be addressed in future. So that's what you will mention here. You would also mention acknowledgements. It could be 1 or 2 lines. That is optional part. Acknowledgement means if you have got help in your work from someone, from some individual or from some organization. Let's say you have obtained some data set from an institution. You would like to acknowledge that. Okay. And then last section is the references section, where you provide your bibliography or references, what you have used in your reports. That's around 5%. Okay. So that's the rough structure of a report. Okay. Now the question is where we should start writing. Okay. So shall we write abstract first? Shall we write title, author's affiliation, name, etc., or shall we write references, or shall we start with directly introduction, or maybe proposed work? Okay. What do you think? Where should we start? Yeah. Any suggestion, any recommendation? Which of these sections should be written first?
I would say the introduction.
Introduction, right? Yeah. So that could be one way of one strategy of writing. Okay. So writing sequence wise, there could be many ways. One of the many ways is maybe you write introduction first, as Emmanuel has mentioned that we can start with introduction. Okay. What do we write in introduction and related work, etc.? I'm going to explain that later, but let's first look at the sequence. Okay. First write introduction, then write proposed work. That could be one strategy. In introduction, you are basically providing the motivation of this work and what exactly you're doing here. So just introduce that, and then come to proposed work details and provide that in significant detail. Okay. Then experiments, results, analysis you can add. Then come to related work. Although you might have reviewed all these related work earlier, before introduction, before writing introduction, but maybe you would write it later. Okay. And references will go all along. So when you write introduction, you would also basically add references to that. When you write proposed work, references, as you are adding them, they will come in the references section automatically. And as you have seen in LaTeX, it is very easy. You don't need to care about the numbering and all. You just add a reference, cite that in the report. It will automatically be added to your report with proper numbering. Then the next thing you could write is conclusion and future work, and then come to abstract. Once you have the overall picture of your work, then you write abstract, because that is something 150 words, 100 to 150 words, which will give you the gist of the paper, gist of the report, or gist of the work which you have done. Okay. And then finally, you can add title, authors, names, and affiliation. Okay. So this could be one choice, one strategy here. And if you have some acknowledgements to mention, then you can add acknowledgement section as well. Okay. Any suggestion here? Do you think we should start with something else rather than introduction or proposed work, or do you think we should start with the related work or abstract first? Any suggestion? Any buddy who is not in favor of this, strongly opposing this? Okay, nobody. Okay, then let's look at the second choice. And the second choice starts with proposed work. Although you know what you're doing, why you are doing, you know the motivation, you have reviewed literature, and you know what is the novelty of your work. But maybe you would start writing the work itself first, the proposed work. Okay, so maybe we will start with proposed work section first, and then add experiments, results, analysis, and later, once you have the overall picture of your work, okay, then you can write introduction, motivation, etc., and related work, and then afterwards uh, you could write conclusion, future work, etc. But in these four sections, proposed work, experiment, results, analysis, introduction, related work, references will go all along. So as you're writing these, you're citing references, and then they will keep on adding. Okay, conclusion, future work, and abstract, we generally don't put any reference. Okay, and then authors names, affiliation, etc., acknowledgement. So this could be a second strategy of writing. Which one is better? I mean, we can't say one is better than the other. It is up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. You know, some people adopt the first strategy, some people adopt second strategy, or some people may adopt third strategy, which could be completely. But as uh, I would recommend maybe start start with introduction, and what I generally do is I generally follow choice one, this strategy. Okay, all right. Uh, Next thing we're going to talk about is what do we write in these sections. Let's first start with introduction. Okay, and when we write introduction, any writing we do, we have to think very hard. Something like this guy on the screen, smoking, but we generally, I don't encourage we should smoke, but thinking is very necessary. We have to think very hard to in order to write. Okay, and when we write introduction, I would recommend that let's frame some questions which we are going to answer in introduction. Okay, and what are those questions? Those questions are these questions. And these questions, you might see that these questions, some of these questions you might have seen in one of the milestones. I think it was milestone 2 or 3. I asked you to basically think about and mention what problem we are trying to solve. Okay, uh, why this is an important problem, and how is this a challenging problem. So we can try to answer these 3 questions in 1 to 2 paragraphs. Okay, uh, and these are very important questions. We should know what problem we are solving and how we can explain that problem, and we should also mention why this problem is important. We should not be solving a toy problem. The problem which we are solving should be an important problem. That means everybody cares about that problem. Okay, it should not be a problem which nobody cares about. Okay, then how challenging is this a problem? That means it should have certain challenges. It should not be like a toy problem that anybody can solve it. Is sixth grader can also solve it. It should have some sufficient challenges so that uh, uh, we can establish that yes, it's a challenging problem to solve. It requires scientific knowledge to solve the problem. Okay, so this could be in 1 to 2 paragraphs, and we could use phrases like we could start like this problem is important problem. This problem is important because, okay, and hence there is a need for this. So we mention something, and then we establish that yes, that's why there's a need to solve this problem, because this problem is an important problem. Okay, we could also write like the main challenge here is to. So if we find these kind of statements in any report, that means uh, it gives good impression to the reviewer, and the reviewer would or the reader would basically catch these words and will know that yes, what you're writing, you know what you're writing, you know what problem you're solving, why this is an important problem, and that makes your report uh, very easy to read, and it becomes convincing enough to convince any readers that what you're doing is really great. You could add a phrase like the main challenge here is to, or it is challenging to solve this problem, or it is challenging due to these reasons and so on. Okay. So these kind of words, if we can find in the report, that gives a great impression to the reviewer or the reader of the report. Okay. Well, let me give some examples for these three type of questions. What problem we are solving, okay, and why this is an important problem, and how this is a challenging problem to solve. So I'm giving an example from one of my papers, which was published in 2014. Okay, and that paper was about um, W3 privacy, understanding what, when, and where inference channels in multi-camera surveillance video can be used. Okay, right. So here in this paragraph, you see that we started with introduction. We are trying to introduce the problem. Uh, we are saying that sensor traces are found and so on, and then we mention however the use of sensor data in these scenarios often raised privacy concerns. So this is a privacy problem we are trying to solve, and we should then make certain statements why uh, in what scenarios privacy concerns may be there. Okay, and then we should also mention why this is an important problem and why it is challenging. This is because people generally don't like uh, their activities to be recorded and so on. The main challenge here is to, or it is challenging to. So these kind of words, if they are there in the report, that is helpful to convey the message. Okay. Another example, you can find many other examples as well. So let's then move to next question. So after these three questions, and these three questions can be answered in 1 to 2 paragraphs, then the next question would be, what are the existing solutions? So you have introduced what problem you're solving, why this is an important problem, and what are the challenges associated with this problem. Next, you would like to talk about is, what are the existing solutions? Okay, what people have done to solve this problem. Okay, and why these solutions are not sufficient, what particular aspect they solve and what not, and what are their weaknesses. So that could also come in 1 to 2 paragraphs, and for that we can use the phrase like this. Okay, now the point here is, try to keep it short and to the point, because when you're writing about existing solutions, you would also have a separate related work section, and there you would be providing all those works in greater detail. And here what you want to do is, you just want to give a gist of the existing work, that existing work, they do this, but they have this limitation, they have this weakness, which we are trying to solve through the proposed method. Okay, so try to keep this part short and to the point, and we can use phrase like this, and for that we will go to the next slide. Okay, so what are the existing solutions? For existing solutions, you can use phrase like this, that in the past decade there have been many efforts to solve this problem and so on. Okay, or to resolve the above mentioned problem, researchers have proposed these methods, or a naive solution to address this problem could be this. However, this solution has the following limitations. Okay, so these kind of phrases can be used. Other phrase could be, while existing solutions have the advantage of this, but they suffer from the following weaknesses. Okay, so we should be as explicit as possible in reviewing the existing works. Okay, other thing could be then, once we have mentioned that these are the weaknesses of the existing methods, then probably we can add that this motivates us to devise a method or to come up with a new method for solving this particular aspect of the problem which has not been solved before. So for a problem, there could be multiple aspects to solve. Some aspects might have been solved, some aspects are not solved, and they can be explicitly put in the report. Okay. Okay, let me give you some examples of what are the existing solutions. Okay, when to describe existing solutions, one way of doing this could be, this is again coming up from the same paper of 2014. We try to write it like this: in the past works on privacy preserving applications of video, it has been assumed and so on. So there has been a great deal of work, or in these works we describe that in these works this has been done. Okay. For the other question, why they are not sufficient, what aspect they solve, what not, and what are their weaknesses, we could add something like this. Let's say this is coming from another paper which was published in 2015, and we try to mention it like, in the past researchers have widely used this method, these properties of this method. However, in both of these works, we mentioned about two works here, Islam et al. 2019, and then Manu et al. 2009, and then all those, and Sinching 2012. However, in both of these works, the proposals are, so that's how we are presenting the limitations of those works, and also provided another work and then mentioning that however their method presents huge data expansion. So we are also providing what are the weaknesses or shortcomings of their work which we are trying to solve in our work. Okay, all right. So what we have done so far, we have addressed a number of questions here in introduction, and the questions were like this. The first question was what problem we are solving, why this is an important problem, and how this is a challenging problem. So one to two paragraphs for this. Then what are the existing solutions, why they are not sufficient, what are their weaknesses, and that could be 1 to 2 paragraphs. Then next thing we are going to do is, once we have told that okay, this problem we are solving, this is an important problem, these are the challenges associated with the problem, these are the existing solutions, these solutions are not sufficient, and therefore there's a need of another solution. Then we come up with the next question is, what is our core idea and solution? And remember that everything this we are writing in introduction. So introduction is something like a section which is very, very important from a reader's perspective. Why? Because readers usually read introduction, and from the introduction they will get everything about most of the idea about the paper, what they're doing, then how they are doing, what are the minute details. If they're interested in that, they would read the rest of the paper. If the introduction is not interesting, they would not read the paper. They would not read your work. Okay, so introduction is very, very important, and it has to be convincing, appealing, and motivating readers to read the rest of the paper. So the next question here, we're going to come up with what is our core idea and solution. Okay. So not only that, and how this idea is different or novel and better compared to existing solutions. So our idea has to be different and novel. That means this particular thing has not been done before. And not only that, we could do something which is novel, but it is not better. So it has to be novel as well as superior or better in some sense compared to existing solutions. This we could write in 1 to 2 paragraphs, and this is a very, very important paragraphs of introduction where you are kind of providing the core idea of your solution. Okay, you could use the phrases like this: to overcome the above mentioned problems. So the problems we have already mentioned before. What problem we are solving, why it is important, what are the challenges, what existing works have done, and what they haven't done, and what problems are still remaining. And then we mentioned that to overcome the above mentioned problems, we propose this solution. Okay, or the core idea behind our method is this. So core idea is again a very important keyword in any report or any new research type of a work. Okay, or you could also write like novelty of the proposed method lies in. So that means you are explicitly mentioning that what is the novelty and what is the core idea. And if you're not writing these, that means probably you don't know, you are not sure what the novelty of your method is, or you don't know what exactly the key idea behind your method. Okay, so these are very important things to mention in any report. We could also be explicit about that this method is better than or different from this and this method in the following two aspects, or one or two aspects. Okay, the proposed method is different from this method and this method in the following two aspects. Okay, all right, let's come up with a few examples of this. Okay, the examples of this could be, okay, in this article, that is also coming from one of my previous paper of 2015, and it says in this article we propose a novel and efficient method, and our core idea is to, and the real challenge lies here, and the proposed method addresses the above given challenge and accomplishes the following goals. So this kind of thing could be added in reports. So core idea keyword is a very important thing, which when I review any research paper, I try to look for these kind of keywords. So let's see whether authors, they know what is their core idea, and if I find that if they have explicitly mentioned that, that becomes quite impressive. Otherwise, it comes to the mind of readers that okay, authors, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what is their key idea about this method. Okay, we could also mention it like to the best of our knowledge, this is the first attempt. So this is a very very important keyword here, or phrase here, to the best of our knowledge. That means this is safe to say, okay, you are not making a confirm statement, this is the first attempt, but you say that okay, as far as we know, or to the best of our knowledge, this is the first attempt to solve this problem. Okay, so this is a safer statement to say, that instead of saying that this is the first attempt. Okay, so you can add that as far as we know, or this is the, to the best of our knowledge, this is the first attempt to solve this problem. We could also see like the proposed method is an improvement over the existing methods in this aspect, and so on. Okay, so this establishes core idea thing, different, novel, and better. Okay, all right, then I think we are running out of time now, so we'll continue with this discussion in the next class, and we'll talk about how do we write then introduction, and then we'll come to related work. Then I will give you some tips of writing proposed work, experiment results analysis, etc., and then writing conclusion, abstract, and all. Okay, so if you find it interesting, please come to the next class. Okay, all right, now I will stop sharing this, and then I will post all the slides on Blackboard as well. Okay, for your attendance, okay, may I ask you to write in the chat box, just say present. Okay, so let me start with, let's say I would write present. Okay, and then I will use this as your attendance for today.